Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Today I'm gonna go over the top 5 premium decks right now. If you still need any Vanguard cards, go to 50cards.shop. If you still need a beautiful new playmat, go to zerodamagegaming.com and use the code Solemn for a discount. And finally, if you want to up your Vanguard skills, consider picking up Vanguard Mastery once again at zerodamagegaming.com. Now, once again, like with my other top 5 videos, this is not in any particular order. These are just 5 decks that I consider extremely good in the format right now. And after that, I'll also be going over some honorable mentions because Premium does have a lot of viable decks right now. First, let's talk about Steam Maiden. Just like in V, Steam Maiden is an incredibly strong deck. We still have Entarana and Gearcat, which pluses a billion. Yes, Colossus is gone, but in my opinion, this deck is still viable in both formats. Some could even argue that it's still the best deck in both formats. In Premium, it also has the added benefit of Time Leap cards from back in the day in the form of Melem and TikTok, and also has Shlishma, which is a really powerful stride. Colossus being gone doesn't really change that, and just like I said in my V Premium list, this deck actually got more consistent by cutting Colossus because it now has room for other cards. I know its ceiling decreased, like the power output of some of their turns has gone down, but it did get a higher floor in return. Next on this list, we have Narukami. Whoa, it's almost like this ban list didn't really change that much. Now, jokes aside, I do think the ban list changed the game for the better, but it didn't really nuke any deck. It didn't make any deck unplayable. It just made the most unfair ones slightly more fair. Yes, Naru did lose Stunverse, but I've been testing a little bit already with just the one Stunverse and then changing the right target to sweep command. And while that's obviously not as insane as the Vowing deck, it's still actually perfectly viable. And in matchups where you're desperate for Bulwark, you can still just first stride Stunverse to turn on the Bulwark and that way make their following stride much weaker, and then you can still just kill them on X turn. So yes, the deck is not as insane anymore. It definitely lost that dimension of just playing a really lame, unfair game where it damage denied and didn't really care about tempo because it would auto-win on the second or third Stunverse. So that's true, it did get weaker, but I still think it's actually one of the most consistent good decks in Premium right now. Another cool thing about this deck is because its strides are so key to everything they do, they actually have a lot of room in the main deck for, you know, changing whatever you want to accommodate for the current format. Next on this list, we have a controversial one, maybe, and that's Nightmare Dolls. Now, I know this deck hasn't been getting a lot of attention anymore, but in Springfest, it was like the second best deck after Order Colony, and Order Colony got nuked. The format before that, it was the best deck by a mile. And so now that Ripple and MFD are gone and we hit both Steam and Naru, this deck is honestly just really good right now. It can still do all of its ride down shenanigans. It can still do its dust. It can still do, you know, all of that beautiful stuff. But on top of that, it also got a disgusting G-Guardian. Number 4 on this list is Bermuda Triangle Highlander. This deck has been viable for quite a while. We saw it, I believe, topping for realsies in BRO maybe for the first time. And then in Springfest, it was played a little bit and also topped a bit. And then in BRO again, it started topping, especially because they got Heltrada, which increased the power of the deck. Then in BCS season, at first, it couldn't really play at all because MFD and Ripple just annihilated that deck. And then afterwards, we saw it topping a little bit again. This deck right now has Reindeer as its main ride target, which means it can do ride down stuff, but it also has a really strong first stride. And so it can search a lot of really good things with Katire while also having a really solid push. Now, its primary issue is that when you don't draw Katire, the deck gets a lot worse. Now, I've seen arguments from both sides, some saying that, oh, this should have totally been hit because right now it's so insane and unfair. And I've also seen people who say like, oh, if you don't draw Katire, this deck is unplayable. That's not really entirely true. The deck is still playable without it, but it does feel much weaker to a point where I'm like, if you don't draw Katire, wouldn't you rather play any of this deck? And the answer is often yes. So when it draws Katire, really insane deck. When it doesn't draw Katire, just a good deck. The question is, do you want a good deck or a very good deck? Now, for number 5 on this list, we have probably the most controversial one because it actually didn't top that much this season. It's not even on that many people's radar, and some people will just call me crazy. But I think number 5 is Tavas. It is probably, to some, the most fair deck on this list, but in my opinion, this deck's ride down is really disgusting. It can easily outcompete the ride downs of Steam Maiden, of Nightmare Doll, of Highlander, and if you ride up, they're gonna draw a billion of Genbolt. Overall, the deck is like really solid. Now, do I think it's the very best deck? Oh my god, not necessarily, but it should easily be in this top 5. When I looked at the honorable mentions that I'm gonna go over in a second here, I didn't think, oh, these should definitely be above Tavas. I just don't think so, which is wild because this deck didn't top that much this season. Then again, it also wasn't really played that much this season. At the first half half of the season, if you were an Aquaforce player, what the hell were you doing on Tavas? Clearly you wanted to be on Ripple. And on the second half of the season, okay, now you first of all have like way less potential for results because half the season was already taken up by Ripple. And then secondly, of course, there were a slightly better decks as well. You had Steam Maiden, you had Naru, you know. But despite all that, I think this deck is actually still really solid. You have the same things as in V, you know, really well scaling, drawing a billion, and in Premium you have the added benefit of playing your ride down game and really solid strides. Its only main issue really is that it doesn't have an unfair bullshit auto win stride. It doesn't have its dust. If Tavas had dust, Tavas would probably be the best deck in the format. But it doesn't, so you know. Despite that though, it's a really solid deck for sure. Now for the honorable mentions, of course we first have to mention No Life King Dark Irregulars. This deck has been memed a lot lately on Twitter, some people saying it's the best deck ever, other people saying this is the worst deck ever, and both can be true. Sometimes you're gonna open a hand and you're gonna go, whoa, I won the game. Other times you're gonna open your hand, you're gonna go, whoa, no matter what I do, I've lost the game. And that is simply how DI operates. There's a billion little things that need to go right, and then your deck is simply unstoppable, and there's a billion other things that might go wrong, and then your deck is stopped by literally anything. Most people also by now know that if they go second against Dark Irregular, they simply have to damage deny it, and now it really can't do much. Whereas going first, you just rush the living hell out of it, and then the DI player might not be able to do much. So on top of the fact that some hands are unplayable, if your opponent is good at the game, despite your hand, the deck might still be unplayable. Now of course, this doesn't mean I'm making fun of the deck. It is still entirely possible that this deck tops Worlds or even wins Worlds. All you need is a lot of luck on the day itself. Covetous Succubus definitely made this deck way better, so I'm not like casting it aside or anything like that, but you know, you gotta know what you're dealing with when you're looking at a deck. Next on the list we have Spikes. Spikes really just got the buff they needed with Galley. Galley is an incredibly good stride. Right now they also have a really solid grade 2 game, and then they also have a really solid ride-up. You know, you have your ride-up with Greedon and Rising Place, with the new Max making it even better. But in my opinion, it still isn't really at the top of the tier. It definitely won, I think, twice last season. It's not a bad deck by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not quite in the same league as the top 5 in my opinion either. It still can't ride down and such. Next we have Dimension Police. Dimension Police is actually a really solid deck right now. The G Guardian they got in Premium Collection is just unfair as hell. They can also just randomly kill you with Linka, and there's nothing you can do about it. Shield scales to infinity the longer the game goes on. Its biggest weakness is really just that they have no grade 2 game, they have no ride down, they basically need to ride up, pray to not die, and then gradually auto-win. Next we have a Grand Blue, and similarly to Dimension Police, once again this deck is like really solid if the game goes on long enough, but it needs to get there. They can grade 2 game, but they can't outgrade 2 game a lot of these ride down decks, so they need to basically instantly ride up, pray to survive a stride, then do their own first stride, and you better have had your G Guardian, because if you didn't, this is not gonna go well for you. And then you still need to survive another stride, and then you get to do your actual kill. Now sometimes you might have like a navigator setup where you can do a bad bounty turn on the first stride, but this is not really confirmed at all. Finally we have Regalia, which was part of our 4 Springfest wins lineup because of Mohammed, on YouTube known as Astral Susano, probably the best Genesis player in the world. Regalia is still really solid. It has a really strong ride up, it has really strong strides, it has really solid G Guardians, it has infinite trigger send back BS. Its big issue of course is once again, it doesn't really have a grade 2 game, and it doesn't have a ride down blade. So it also needs to just ride up and, you know, hopefully do enough damage there that they auto win, or ride up, live a stride, and then kill you. So basically in a similar vein as Grand Blue and Dimension Police. Despite that though, I do still believe it's a very scary deck to verse, especially in the hands of someone like Mohammed. So that was my top 5 decks for the premium format right now, as well as some honorable mentions. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you need any Vanguard cards, go to 50cards.shop and use the code Solemn. And if you need a beautiful playmat, go to ZeroDamageGaming.com and use the code Solemn. I will see you soon. Ciao.